What's good, guys? It's your boy 6'8 Cop coming to you today. Just want to kind of let you know how I feel about this George Floyd deal. All right. Honestly, it's kind of sad situation that we're dealing with now, and have been dealing with. It's kind of hard to talk about, for one, being in the situation that I am as a police officer, as a black police officer, and, constantly seeing some of the things that have been happening. And I will say this, I'm kind of torn at this point. Don't get me wrong, I love my department, I love what I do, but it's tough seeing people being mistreated, black people being mistreated. This incident could have been avoided, I think. From the video that I saw, I didn't see any kind of fight being put up by George Floyd other than him trying to get those officers off his back. I don't understand 4 officers being on scene, George being detained and face down. I don't understand where the threat was at that point. I wasn't there. I don't know what the situation was as far as them detaining him prior. But I do know, just from the video that I saw, they responded to a call. I think it was in reference to a check that he was trying to cash or something like that. I didn't see him resist. He may have been a little upset. I would think, anybody would, that, probably being accused of something that they didn't do. So at that point, they detained him, and from what I saw, he just fell to the ground. At that point, as an officer, there was no need for that excessive force. Now, don't get me wrong, we do have to use force sometimes, but there's a difference between excessive force and use of force. Quick example. Use of force, we go to a domestic call and someone comes out with a knife towards us or with a gun. So yes, we have to use force at that point. Excessive, in George Floyd's situation, 4 officers detained. 1 officer has his knee on his neck for over 8 minutes. I've been in law enforcement for 8 years, never been trained to put my knee on anybody's neck. I will say this, we have been trained, if we have to detain someone while cuffing and they're resisting, we have been trained to put our knee on their back to get more leverage when we are handcuffing. But once the handcuffs go on, the fight is over. In that situation, George was begging for his life, begging for air. Somebody should have mentioned something or said something or shown a little bit of restraint and set George up. If that would happen, he would probably still be here today. Yeah, it's difficult. People are looting and burning things. Now, I don't agree with that, the looting part, burning things, burning businesses in your community. But I do believe in protesting. I do believe in a peaceful protest. And the peaceful protest is just the people showing their frustration. You know, I know sometimes our frustration kind of boils over to other things, which leads to the looting part, I think, and the destruction. But I don't agree with that. I do agree with a peaceful protest, because it's time out. It's time out for rogue police officers. It's time out for officers who were nothing before they got this badge. And it's time out for officers, once they get the badge, start treating people the way they probably got treated when they was younger, or whatever the case may be. There are good officers out here. I would say in my department, we have good officers. I don't want people to think across the board that all officers are the same. That's not the case. And I want to go back to the excessive force and the use of force. Excessive force, for an example, just to clarify so you understand the difference. I'm going to go back. Rodney King, excessive force. You had about 8 officers beating this guy with clubs. For what, I don't know. At what point did they feel the need for all officers to participate in beating on this guy, beating on him? Eric Gardner, another example of excessive force. Granted, he was a fairly nice-sized guy, big guy. 5 officers on him, trying to detain him. At one point, when Gardner put his hands behind his back, there was an officer on his neck choking him the entire time. Excessive. George Floyd. You have an officer that has his knee on his neck for over 8 minutes. Excessive. And the sad part about it is, once the EMT people arrived on scene, he continued to apply pressure to his neck. Nothing that we was ever taught. There was no remorse. Once they got there, they just picked him up, put him on a gurney. Nobody tried to render aid, which is something that we're taught. If someone gets injured, it's our job to render aid, regardless of the situation. At that point, they checked his pulse. From what I was told, from what the video was saying, he was unconscious at that time. They just put him on the gurney and took him off. No one attempted to render aid at that point. Something that we are not taught. It's sad to see that officer showed no remorse once he stood up. No remorse was shown for Floyd. And it's time out, guys. It's time out for that. I can understand the frustration that black people are dealing with, and it's because it's time out for the way that we are being treated. And I say this again, don't let that one officer dictate how you feel about police officers. All officers are not that way. So one thing I think we should do, in my department, we take a lot of laterals from other departments. I think one thing we need to implement to weed these rogue officers out is to check for a excessive force or use of force. Well, I would say excessive force complaint. If that officer has multiple excessive force complaints, people calling in saying they didn't like how they was treated, or they don't like how they was handled when they was arrested, or whatever the case may be, I think that needs to be investigated a little bit more. Because just like it happened in Minneapolis, it can happen anywhere. You can have that one officer that does something that taints the whole department, that affects the whole department. Just like it happened there, it can happen here. It can happen in my small city where I work, in my department. So I think those type of measures need to be taken when you're bringing officers into your police department. Now, those officers that are already in your police department, if you see some kind of negative activity on a call with the officer, whatever it may be, we as police officers, as good police officers, we need to step up. We need to step up and make it be known we're not having this here. Because like I said, ultimately what's going to happen, we're going to have the same situation here or anywhere else like they did in Minnesota, Minneapolis. And it's sad to say that they are good officers and they are definitely bad officers. But we have to be diligent in seeking and getting rid of those officers that are rogue officers. I hate the situation happened the way it did, but it's time out for it. It's time out for it. And like I said, I'm torn because me being a black man in this uniform is difficult seeing certain situations. Eric Garner, George Floyd, Rodney King, many more. You know, and it's tough being in the situation I am. I've gotten all kind of text messages and calls about how I feel about it. It's tough. It's really tough, and it's sad that we have to deal with police officers that's taking advantage of people. All right. So with that being said, guys, remember, guys, again, there are good police officers that actually love what they're doing and appreciate their job and appreciate the people in their community. I got into this 2012 with the expectation of helping people. I've always been a people person. I consider myself a gentle giant, you know, but some officers that don't have that same desire. So we have to be diligent and as far as getting rid of those rogue officers. All right, so that's how I feel about the George Floyd situation, guys. Just remember to be safe. Always put God first in everything you do. We are dealing with trying times right now, coronavirus, this situation with George Floyd. It's time that we put all our faith in God, everything that we do, all of our, you know, everything that we do, you know, God is the answer. You know, we have to turn to Him. We have to stay prayed up. Definitely pray for the Floyd family. And just pray for anybody who's lost their lives dealing with this situation. Guys, just remember to again put God first in all that you do. And once again, I appreciate you guys listening to me. You know, this is just my opinion. I hope I didn't offend anybody, but this is just how I feel about the situation. Y'all have a good day. Peace.